never thought winning the lottery would put my life in danger. We were sitting in my small dining room. It was nearly 11 p.m., and the air felt heavy, like it knew something I didn't. I'd made chamomile tea, just as I always do when my nerves act up, but even that wasn't enough to calm what was about to unfold. My son, Ryan, leaned over the table. His face was red, maybe from the beer, maybe from whatever was boiling inside him, and that vein in his neck pulsed like a warning light. "Mom," he said, with that sickly sweet voice he uses when he wants something, "you really should give us at least half. It's only fair." I opened my mouth to speak, but then came the line that turned my blood to ice. "Or God forbid, you slip in the tub one night." And he smiled, like it was a joke. Like he didn't know that I, at 68, bathed with a plastic stool and a prayer on my lips. Melissa, my daughter-in-law, sat there in silence, swirling her tea. She didn't blink, just watched me with a faint little smile like she was already redecorating my house in her head. She said nothing, but that silence? It screamed. I didn't respond, just blinked, nodded, looked away. Not because I was afraid. Because I was recording. Above the dining table, nestled inside the air vent, was a tiny camera. Discreet, quiet, installed just 2 days ago. Courtesy of a technician recommended by the bank manager who'd raised her eyebrows when I said I needed a private account. 2 days before, Ryan had started circling me like a vulture. He kept hinting, "What are you going to do with all that money? You should think about the future. Let us help manage it, Mom." He meant, "Let us take it from you." And I wanted to believe it was just shock. Just poor judgment. But that night, when he suggested my death as a solution, that's when I saw him clearly. Not as my son, but as a man I barely recognized. A man who used to build birdhouses with his father in the backyard. A boy who once called me his hero. Now he was threatening me, for money. Melissa stood, thanked me for the tea as if nothing had happened, and walked out like she already owned the place. Ryan hugged me, if you could call it that. It was quick, cold, robotic. And he whispered, "Think about it, Ma. Don't be selfish." I closed the door behind them slowly. Turned the lock. Then just stood there in the dark. The only sound was the faint hum of the ceiling fan, and my own heartbeat, loud and angry in my ears. I wasn't just a sweet, lucky old woman anymore. I was a target. And the only thing between me and whatever they were planning was that blinking green light above the dining table. After they left, I just sat there, tea gone cold, hands trembling around the mug I never even sipped. The house was so quiet I could hear the old clock ticking in the hallway, each second louder than the last. I had raised that boy. Ryan was mine before he was anyone else's. I held him through fevers, listened to every silly story, packed his lunch for 12 straight years. When his father died, he was only 10. He clung to me like a baby bird fallen from the nest. And now he was threatening me, for money. Not even outright. That would have been too easy. No, he wrapped his threat in sarcasm and smiles. "God forbid you slip in the tub." As if I didn't understand the message. But I did. Oh, I did. The worst part wasn't even the threat, it was the way he looked at me while he said it. Cold, like I was already dead weight. Like I was standing between him and a better life. Melissa didn't even need to say anything, her silence screamed agreement. And me? I sat there, nodding, pretending not to be shaken. But inside, something was breaking. I looked around the room, the same dining room my husband built with his own hands. The wood-paneled walls, the lace curtains I sewed 30 years ago, the oak table that had seen birthdays, holidays, tears, and prayers. And now it had seen this. That night, for the first time in years, I didn't clean up right away. I left the mugs where they were. I didn't care if the sugar crusted in the bottom or if the spoon stained the napkin. I sat, and I thought, how did we get here? When did my boy become this man who sees me as a bank account instead of a mother? Was it after Melissa? Was it the job loss? Was it me? Did I make it too easy for them to lean on me? To expect and never appreciate? And then, I remembered the camera. Still rolling quietly in the vent above. I stood, walked over to the wall panel, and checked the monitor hidden in the old bread box. The footage was clear. Ryan's face, red and smug. Melissa, sipping tea like a queen. And the words, every last one, saved on that little memory card. I exhaled, because now I knew what they were capable of. And I also knew, I wasn't going down easy. That night, I didn't sleep much. I sat by the window, watching the streetlights blink. I held the mug with both hands, letting the warmth bring back feeling to my fingers. My mind was a storm of thoughts. But underneath it all, a plan was forming. They wanted half? They'd get nothing but the sharp end of a smarter woman. Because while Ryan inherited his father's smile, I kept the man's spine of steel. And I wasn't done yet. It rained the next morning. Not a gentle drizzle, the kind of rain that drums hard on the roof and makes the world feel heavier. I stayed curled up on the couch, a blanket around my shoulders and the old photo album on my lap. I hadn't looked through it in years. Page after page, Ryan's baby pictures, his first steps, that awful bowl haircut he insisted on in 3rd grade. Then one photo stopped me. Ryan, 10 years old, standing next to his father with a crooked birdhouse in his hands. They'd built it together out in the garage. My husband, Harold, had sawdust in his hair and the biggest smile on his face. I remember the way Ryan looked at him that day. Like his dad hung the stars. When Harold passed away the year after, something in Ryan cracked. He stopped talking for a week. Slept in my bed like a scared child. I became his whole world. Or so I thought. I turned another page and found one from his high school graduation. That stiff smile he gave the camera, cap slightly askew. And right next to it, the first photo of Melissa. She was just his girlfriend then. Standing too close, already in high heels and a dress too tight for the occasion. That's when the shift began. Melissa was polite at first, too polite. Compliments with a bite. "You're so organized, Evelyn. I wish I had the time to keep my place as neat as yours." Or, "You're so good with your money." I could never lie that modestly. Modestly, that's what she called it. The house Harold built with his own hands. The furniture I cleaned every week. The life I built penny by penny. After they married, Ryan started pulling away. Not abruptly. It was subtle. He'd call less. Visit only on holidays. When I'd send groceries or a check to help out, they thanked me through emojis. No more handwritten notes. No hugs that lingered. And still, I gave. Because that's what mothers do, right? We give and we hope. We hope that one day they'll see it. The sacrifices. The quiet love. The way we say, "I'm fine," when we're not, just so they don't worry. But Ryan didn't see it. Or maybe he saw it and decided it wasn't enough. I closed the photo album and looked out the window. The roses in the garden were drooping from the weight of the rain. Just like me. Bent, but not broken. I whispered, "When did you stop being my boy?" There was no answer. Just the rain. But that question, it stayed with me all day. Not out of sadness anymore. Out of clarity. Because sometimes, to move forward, you have to mourn not just who you lost, but who you thought they were. And I was done mourning. They wanted a piece of me. But they forgot. I'm not some confused old woman sitting on a fortune. I'm the woman who raised a child through grief. Who survived a widowhood with grace. Who kept a home standing when the walls wanted to cave in. They picked the wrong old woman. The next day, I put on my nicest sweater and walked into the bank like a woman on a mission. It was cold inside, banks always are, but I didn't flinch. I had my purse, my documents, and that tiny camera footage backed up on a flash drive tucked neatly in my coat pocket. "Morning, Evelyn," the bank manager, Lila, greeted me with a smile that almost reached her eyes. "Coffee?" I shook my head. "Not today, sweetheart. I need to move some things around." Quietly. She raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Led me into her glass office with the fake ficus tree in the corner. I sat down, clasped my hands, and looked her dead in the eye. "I want everything in a new account. Private. With alerts on every transaction. And no one else gets access." She blinked. "Not even family?" "Especially not family." That's when I pulled out the flash drive. "I also need a referral. Someone who installs home security cameras. The kind you don't see." Lila studied me for a second longer than felt comfortable. Then she gave a slow, understanding nod and opened a drawer in her desk. She handed me a business card. Black and silver. No logo, just a name and a number. "Tell her Lila sent you." The rest of the appointment went smoothly. We transferred the bulk of my winnings into a blind trust under my full control. I made sure the house, the car, and even my name on the old utility accounts were updated with layers of protection. No one was going to sneak in and claim anything of mine again, not with sweet talk, not with threats. As I signed the last document, I caught my reflection in the window behind her. My eyes looked sharper. My back was straighter. It was the look of someone who'd been backed into a corner and found a hidden door. When I stood to leave, Lila walked me to the exit. "You okay, Evelyn?" I paused, hand on the glass door. "I'm getting there." She smiled softly. "Whatever this is about, good for you. Some folks wake up too late." I walked out into the afternoon sun, clutching that black and silver card like it was a key. Because it was. They thought I was just a retiree with too much time and too much luck. What they forgot. I used to catalog entire libraries. I know how to organize chaos. I know how to find things others miss. And I never forget a name, a face, or a slight. By the time I got home, I already knew where I'd put the new cameras. I already knew how I'd restructure my will. I already knew the name of the lawyer I'd meet next. They'd made their move. Now it was my turn. And I don't play to lose. The security office was tucked behind a locksmith shop, no bigger than a broom closet, but the woman inside had eyes like a hawk and moved like she didn't miss a thing. Mid-40s, black hair in a tight bun, sleeves rolled up like she had no time for nonsense. "You Evelyn?" she asked, barely glancing up from her tablet. "I am. Lila sent me." That got her attention. She looked up, studied me a second, then nodded toward the chair across from her desk. "Covert or visible?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" "For the cameras. You want them to see they're being watched, or do you want to catch 'em before they know you know?" I smiled despite myself. "Let's go covert." She grinned. "Now we're talking." I felt like a little girl with a secret. Like I'd just joined some underground resistance. Except I was wearing orthopedic shoes and a cardigan with loose buttons. She asked for a layout of the house. I pulled out the rough sketch I'd drawn by hand on graph paper that morning. She looked it over like a general reviewing a battlefield. "Living room, dining room, hallway. You've got blind spots here and here. You'll want one in the vent, another behind the bookcase, maybe a doorbell cam too, just to keep 'em honest. Do you install them yourself?" "Always. Discreet. No holes, no mess, no questions." She paused, eyes narrowing slightly. "Who are we protecting from, if you don't mind me asking?" I hesitated for half a second, then said it plain. "My son and his wife." Her face didn't change. Not shock. Not pity. Just understanding. "Happens more than you'd think," she said quietly, tapping a few things into her tablet. "People get greedy. Especially when they think the older ones won't notice." "I noticed," I said. "Good. That's what saves you." We scheduled the installation for Thursday. She'd come while they were at work, no logos on her van, no uniform. Just another woman with a drill and a purpose. When I stood to leave, she handed me a small keychain, looked like a car remote, but it wasn't. "Panic button," she said. "Press it twice, it starts recording immediately from all feeds. Press and hold, it alerts my office. No monthly fee, just peace of mind." I took it, feeling the weight of it in my hand. Not heavy, but powerful. Outside, the air smelled like motor oil and fresh cut wood. I climbed into my car and sat there for a long minute, holding that keychain and staring at the sky. I wasn't just protecting my house. I was reclaiming it. No one else needed to know, not yet. Let them think I was still soft, still scared, still wavering. Let them keep playing checkers. Because I just switched to chess. And I was already 3 moves ahead. Sunday morning came with crisp air and the smell of damp earth. I went to Mass, like I always do, but this time I sat in the back pew. Close to the door, just in case. I didn't sing the hymns. Didn't mouth the prayers. I just listened. Let the old words wash over me like warm water over tired bones. Afterward, while most of the congregation moved toward the parish hall for coffee and donuts, I slipped outside. Waited by the old oak tree near the parking lot. Clara would find me. She always did. And sure enough, there she was, clutching her oversized purse and wearing that same tired coat she's had since 1998. Her eyes squinted as she spotted me. "Evelyn," she called, "why are you out here freezing your backside off?" I gave her a tired smile. Needed air. And a friend. She didn't ask questions, just linked her arm through mine and walked me slowly toward my car. "They think I'll just give it to them," I said softly, once we were out of earshot. "Like I'm holding their prize money hostage." Clara didn't answer right away. She just squeezed my arm. I raised him, "Clara. I nursed him through chickenpox, listened to every heartbreak, every tantrum, every dream. And now he's threatening me. And she, Melissa, she just smiles like this is her story now. Like I'm some final boss to defeat before they get the castle. We stopped at the edge of the lot. I didn't want to cry, but I could feel the sting behind my eyes. Clara reached into her purse and handed me a tissue without saying a word. You taught hundreds of kids to read, she said. Built a whole community library out of nothing but expired coffee and bake sale money. You don't need to prove anything to them. I thought maybe I did, I admitted. I thought if I gave enough, loved enough, they'd finally see me. Clara tilted her head. And what do you see now? My mistake. She nodded like that was the only answer that made sense. You're not alone, she said. You've got more people in your corner than you think. You just need to stop making space for the ones who only show up to take. That line hit me hard. Stop making space. I thought of all the times I rearranged my life for Ryan and Melissa. All the times I said yes because it was easier than explaining no. All the birthdays they skipped. All the holidays where I was the one doing the driving, the cooking, the gifting. And now? Now they were planning how I'd die and leave it all behind. But not yet. Not like this. Clara patted my arm. You want me to come over and help you change the locks? I laughed. Already on it. She grinned. Good. Because Evelyn? This is your story. And for the first time in weeks, I believed it. I met him at the corner cafe, the kind of place with wobbly chairs and too many ferns. I wore my good coat and sat near the back, where no one could overhear. He arrived 5 minutes early. That was a good sign. Mrs. Sullivan? He asked, glancing around. I just nodded. Call me Evelyn. He didn't offer a business card. Didn't ask too many questions. That's why I chose him. Clara had given me his number, whispered it like a secret recipe. He's quiet, she'd said. And he doesn't blink twice when people come to him with messes. I slid a folder across the table, bank statements, lottery documents, copies of everything I'd already secured. He glanced through them without surprise. So, he said finally, you want to protect your assets. No, I corrected, leaning forward. I want to vanish. On paper, anyway. I want everything removed from my name. The house, the car, the accounts. If anyone comes digging, I want them to find nothing but a prepaid phone bill and a subscription to the Reader's Digest. He smiled at that, but it didn't reach his eyes. This man had seen worse than greedy sons and smug daughters-in-law. I can set up a blind trust, he said. We'll move the money. Make sure you're the only trustee. We'll use a corporate name, nothing traceable. You'll still have full control, but it won't look like it from the outside. And the house? A trust owns it now, he explained. Not you. Which means if your son tries to pull any legal tricks, say, claiming you're mentally unfit to manage your own finances, he'll have nothing to grab onto. That's exactly what I needed to hear. He went on, explaining how we'd update my will, assign a medical power of attorney to someone neutral, and lock everything behind firewalls of paperwork. It was all quiet, legal, bulletproof. At one point, he looked up from his notes. Most people in your situation wait too long. I stared out the cafe window. Most people still believe their children love them. He didn't respond, just kept writing. Before we parted, I asked the question that had been circling in my head all week. What happens if they come to my house again? He paused, then said plainly, they have no claim to anything. You can call the police. You can press charges if they try to force their way in. Even if they're family? Especially if they're family. He handed me a list of things to do, new locks, new accounts, security upgrades. Most of it, I'd already started. He didn't need to know that. But it felt good to see it written down. Like a checklist for freedom. As I walked out of the cafe, a little boy held the door open for me. I smiled and said thank you. He grinned, gap-toothed, and ran back to his mother. That used to be Ryan. Before Melissa. Before money. Before the rot set in. But I wasn't going to rot with him. I was cutting loose. Legally. Quietly. And next time they knocked, they'd find a different woman answering the door. It was barely past 9 a.m. when the knock came. Not the polite kind. Not the type you give your mother when you're dropping by for coffee. This one was sharp. Purposeful. The kind of knock that says, I already decided how this ends. I stood in the kitchen, holding a knife halfway through an apple. I didn't hurry to the door. Just finished slicing, placed the pieces neatly on a plate, and then, only then, walked over. Ryan stood there, alone this time, hands shoved deep in his coat pockets, eyes darting like a man who knew he wasn't welcome but thought he'd get in anyway. "Morning, Ma," he said. I didn't answer, just waited. He looked past me, as if expecting someone else. Or maybe checking to see how many witnesses were around. "Melissa thinks it's time we move in." Just like that. No please. No explanation. Just a declaration. "You're getting older," he added. "The house is too big for you. We could help. Take care of things." I almost laughed. Instead, I asked, "What things need taking care of?" He blinked. "Wasn't expecting that. You know, maintenance. Bills. Errands. I already do all of that." He shifted on his feet, clearly annoyed. "We just think it'd be best if we were closer. It's safer. You're not as young as you used to be." I tilted my head. "And what would you do, Ryan? Sit on my couch and make sure I don't fall down the stairs?" That made him flinch, just slightly, but he recovered fast. "Melissa and we'd take the upstairs. You could stay down here. Easier for you." So that was the plan. Move in. Take over. Nudge me gently out of my own home until I was just a guest in the back room, tucked away like a dusty family album no one opens anymore. "No," I said. His jaw clenched. He stepped forward, too close, and looked up the staircase behind me. "Accidents happen, Ma." There it was again. The same venom, this time with less sugar. He didn't even try to hide it. I said no, I repeated, louder. I didn't back away. I didn't lower my eyes. He stared at me like he didn't recognize who he was looking at. Maybe he didn't. Maybe the woman who used to cook his favorite meals, who loaned him money without asking when he lost his job, who smiled and nodded through every dig from Melissa, that woman was gone. Good. I shut the door slowly. Firmly. Clicked the lock. Through the peephole, I watched him stand there for a few more seconds, fists clenched in his pockets. Then he turned and walked off, shoulders tight. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. Instead, I walked back to the kitchen, picked up my apple slices, and sat down at the table. This house? Still mine. My body? Still strong. And my mind? Sharper than he ever gave me credit for. They thought I'd roll over. They were wrong. That afternoon, I went out to the garden. I hadn't touched the roses in weeks. They were overgrown, branches tangled, some dead, some hanging low like they didn't know where to fall. I brought out my gloves and my old pruning shears, the ones Harold gave me for our 25th anniversary. Still sharp, still solid, just like me. I crouched beside the oldest bush, the one that never bloomed much but refused to die. Funny thing about roses, they don't care what you meant to do. If you neglect them, they show it. If you baby them too much, they rot. I started trimming. Snip. A dead branch fell to the ground. Snip. Another one, brittle and brown. And I felt it, deep in my bones. I was cutting more than just a plant. All those years of quietly accepting, of waiting for kindness from people who only came around with open palms, that was dead wood now. Sometimes, I whispered, you've got to cut the rot to make room for growth. The wind picked up, cool and clean, brushing against my face like an answer. I worked until the sun began to dip. The bushes looked smaller, but stronger. Ready to bloom again, on their own terms. Just like me. That evening, I did something I should have done a long time ago. I installed a lock on my bedroom door. A real one. Not the flimsy kind you twist with a coin. This one required a key. Because I'd seen the way Ryan looked at the staircase. I'd heard the tone in his voice. And as much as I hated even thinking it, I wasn't safe. Not from strangers. From my own blood. I sat on my bed after installing the lock, fingers still a little sore from turning the screwdriver. I looked around the room, the worn quilt, the framed photo of Harold, the bookshelf that still held his gardening magazines. This was my space. And now, it had a barrier. Not just from harm, but from entitlement. From people who thought they could walk in and rearrange my life like it was furniture. They thought they knew me. That I'd never say no. But they forgot one thing. I'd survived losing a husband. I'd survived raising a son alone. I'd survived working 3 jobs to keep food on the table and a roof overhead. What made them think I couldn't survive them? That night, I slept with the key on a chain around my neck. Not because I was afraid, but because I was finally awake. The roses outside would grow again. And so would I. They came back the next week. Melissa rang the doorbell like she owned it, 3 short presses, no hesitation. I opened the door just wide enough to see her face, then Ryan's behind her, holding a bottle of wine like this was some friendly visit. "We just want to talk," she said, too brightly. I let them in, slowly, watched their eyes scan the living room, like always. Melissa walked straight to the couch, the one Harold and I saved for, penny by penny, and made herself at home. Ryan stayed standing, fidgeting with the wine label. "So," Melissa said, crossing her legs and smiling with all teeth and no warmth. "How much did you win, really?" I blinked. "Excuse me? Oh, come on," she laughed. "You didn't tell anyone the amount. But you know we're family. You can tell us." Ryan added, "We just want to know what we're working with." "For planning." I tilted my head. "Planning what, exactly?" "Family obligations," Melissa said smoothly. "You've always said family comes first." Funny, they didn't remember that when they missed 3 Mother's Days in a row. I leaned back into the armchair. "It wasn't that much," I said, faking a clumsy little shrug. "Just a few million." Melissa's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. I caught the flicker of greed before she even opened her mouth. "Wow," she said, "that's incredible." Ryan nodded quickly. "We were thinking we could help you manage it. Set up some kind of family account. You know, to keep things simple." "Of course," Melissa added, "we're not asking for anything crazy. But it's only fair that we all benefit. You wouldn't want to hoard it all, would you?" I smiled politely. They had no idea. Because behind them, nestled just inside the bookshelf, the little green light blinked once, then again. Recording. Every word, every shift of their tone from cheerful to coercive. Every slip of the mask. Every entitled suggestion wrapped in a smile. I let them talk. About how the house needed remodeling. How they could move in and take over the upstairs. How Ryan could oversee the trust. How Melissa knew a financial advisor, her cousin, who could stretch those millions. I nodded. I asked questions. I kept my face calm and my eyes soft. But inside, I was boiling, not with rage, but with power. Because they thought they were setting a trap. But I was the one holding the rope. After nearly an hour of circling and circling the topic, never asking outright, never saying please, they left. Melissa kissed my cheek like a politician. Ryan gave me a squeeze on the shoulder and said, "We'll be in touch soon. It's important we get ahead of this before the money disappears." I closed the door and locked it. Then walked straight to the bookshelf, retrieved the memory card, and tucked it into my jewelry box. They thought they were clever. But the camera caught it all. And soon, the world would see exactly who they were. That night, I sat in my closet with the door half shut and the lamp on low. It's the only place in the house that still smells like Harold, cedar and shaving cream. I brought my journal, the one with the green cover and frayed edges. I hadn't written in it since he died. But tonight, I needed ink, not tears. I opened to a fresh page and wrote, slow and deliberate, "He will not destroy me. I am not weak. I am his mother. I gave him life, and I will reclaim mine." The pen moved steadily. My hand didn't shake. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, my thoughts came out clear, not clouded by hope or heartbreak. I wrote down every detail from that afternoon, Melissa's fake concern, Ryan's fake generosity, their casual cruelty wrapped in the language of family. I wrote it like a report, like evidence, because that's what it was now. This wasn't grief anymore. It was preparation. I stared at the words I had just written. My handwriting looked different, firmer, like the woman holding the pen had finally remembered who she was. When I was younger, I used to write in this journal during hard seasons, when Harold was sick, when I was raising Ryan alone, when the bank balance barely covered groceries. But even then, I never wrote like this. With fire. With focus. Maybe this was what survival looks like when you're older. Not screaming, not running, just reclaiming space. Quietly, powerfully. I flipped back through old pages. Found one from Ryan's 10th birthday. I'd written, "He told me I'm the best mom in the world." I tucked him in tonight and kissed his forehead. I hope he remembers this when he's older. I touched that sentence like it was a bruise. He didn't remember. Or worse, he did. And decided it wasn't worth anything. I closed the journal and held it against my chest. Outside the closet, the house was still. The security lights blinked outside. The cameras were recording. My bedroom door was locked. I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. I was ready. Because here's what no one tells you about betrayal in old age: it doesn't hollow you out. It hardens you. It wakes you up. It reminds you of every time you bent over backward, every time you gave instead of asked, every time you smiled while swallowing silence. And it gives you back the one thing they never expect you to find again: your edge. I slipped the journal under my pillow and turned off the lamp. Let them whisper. Let them scheme. I had evidence. I had a lawyer. I had a plan. But most importantly, I had me. Fully awake. Fully done begging for love. And fully ready to draw the line. They wanted my fortune. But they forgot, I am the fortune. The next day, I took the bus downtown. Didn't want to risk them spotting my car. Wore a scarf, sunglasses, and my old gray coat, nothing flashy. Nothing to suggest I was carrying the kind of ammunition that could bring two grown adults to their knees. In my purse, a plain flash drive. Inside that drive, everything. Their threats, their manipulation, their smiling, sugar-coated venom. And most importantly, that moment, recorded in full, when my only son leaned across my dining table and said, "God forbid you slip in the tub one night." I had an appointment, not with a lawyer, with my niece, Julia. She worked in media, not tabloid nonsense, real reporting. Investigative pieces, whistleblower stories, local corruption. She'd always called me her favorite aunt, though we only saw each other on holidays. I told her I had something sensitive, urgent, something she'd want to see. We met at her studio. It was all glass and steel, with walls covered in monitors and headlines. She hugged me tight, then stepped back when she saw the look on my face. "I brought something," I said. I handed her the flash drive. She plugged it in immediately, her brow furrowing as she watched. No one else was in the room. Just us. Just the footage. Her face changed, from curiosity, to disbelief, to a quiet, simmering kind of rage. When it ended, she looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "Evelyn," she said slowly, "this is explosive. You understand that, right?" "I do. If this goes public, I know." She sat back, eyes still on the paused frame of Ryan's face mid-threat. "You sure you want this? Once it's out there, it's out there. You won't be able to undo it." I nodded. "I'm done hiding. Let the world see what they've become." She hesitated, then asked gently, "And what do you want from this? Revenge?" "No," I said. "Clarity, protection, and maybe a warning. For every woman out there who thinks she's alone when her own blood turns on her." She leaned forward. "I can run this anonymously. Blur your face. Change your voice. Let the story speak." I shook my head. "No need. I'm not ashamed. I did everything I could. They're the ones who should hide." Julia nodded slowly, lips tight. "This is going to make waves," she warned. "Let it." She promised to handle it with care. To pitch it to her producers with the seriousness it deserved. No clickbait. Just truth. We hugged again at the door. This time, she held on longer. "I'm proud of you, Aunt Evie," she whispered. "Takes guts to stand up like this." "It's not guts," I told her. "It's survival." When I stepped outside, the sun was high and sharp, and the city buzzed around me. I walked 3 blocks before I smiled. They thought they had me cornered. But they didn't realize I had family, too. The kind that tells the truth. The kind that fights back, with facts, not fists. And now? The clock was ticking. 2 mornings later, I was in the kitchen buttering toast when I heard it. My name. Not from someone at the door. Not from a phone call. From the television. I turned toward the sound like a woman in a dream. And there it was, my voice. My living room. That clip. That sentence. "God forbid you slip in the tub one night." Played right there, on national morning news, clear as crystal. The anchor's voice came next. In a chilling recording, an elderly woman captures her own son threatening her over lottery winnings. The footage was provided by her niece, a media producer, and is quickly gaining attention across the country. The room spun. Not from fear. From validation. They didn't edit my words. Didn't sensationalize it. They aired the truth as it was. Raw, awful, undeniable. Melissa's smirk. Ryan's casual cruelty. My silence in that moment, how I blinked, nodded, survived it. The segment ended with the anchor saying, "Viewers across the nation are reacting with outrage and support for the woman, known only as Evelyn." #ProtectEvelyn is now trending on social media. I sat down slowly, toast untouched. The landline rang. I didn't move. It rang again. Then my cell phone buzzed. Ryan. Decline. Melissa's number flashed next. Decline. Then came the text. What did you do? Another one. Seconds later. You ruined us. A third. Take it down. We can fix this. I didn't respond. I poured myself a cup of tea. Then another message came through. This one from a woman named Gloria in Minnesota. A stranger. I saw your video. I'm 72. My daughter did the same thing to me when I inherited money from my brother. I was too afraid to speak up. Thank you for having the courage I didn't. I stared at the message until my eyes blurred. And then, finally, I smiled. Let them scream. Let them rage. Let them flail in the spotlight they so richly earned. Ryan had always wanted attention. Melissa had always wanted control. Now they had both, just not the kind they were expecting. The phone rang again, Ryan this time, then Melissa, then an unknown number. I turned off the ringer. Sat back in my chair. Took a bite of toast. It was cold, but it tasted like justice. That afternoon, Julia called. You okay? She asked. I'm something better than okay, I told her. You're a national icon, she laughed. We had to turn off the comments section, it's blowing up. People are sending flowers to the station. One woman wants to make a documentary. And get this, someone offered to pay for you to write a book. I chuckled, the sound strange in my own throat. Not bad for a quiet librarian, huh? Not bad at all. She paused. They're scared, you know. I heard Ryan called the network. Threatened legal action. Let him try. And I meant it. Because no matter what came next, lawsuits, tantrums, spin control, the video spoke louder than any lie they could conjure. It was done. And I hadn't just saved myself. I'd lit a match for every woman still in the dark. The knock came just after dusk. Not loud, not sharp. This one was different, almost hesitant. I didn't answer right away. I stood behind the curtain and watched him shift from foot to foot on my porch like a boy sent to the principal's office. Ryan. Alone. No Melissa. No wine bottle. No pretense. Just him, eyes red, jaw tight, lips pressed into a thin, bitter line. I opened the door, but only halfway. Let the screen door be the barrier. Let him feel it. You betrayed me, he said, no greeting, no breath wasted. I raised an eyebrow. Did I? His voice cracked. You ruined my life, Mom. No, Ryan, I said, calmly, clearly, without shaking. You ruined it. When you walked into this house and threatened me. When you smiled while your wife eyed my kitchen like she was already redecorating it. When you said accidents happen. He swallowed hard. You had no right to record us. Oh, but I did, I said. And thank God I did. Because without that video, no one would have believed me. You wore my love like armor, thinking it made you untouchable. His voice rose. You humiliated me. You turned the whole country against me. Then maybe, I said slowly, you should ask yourself why they believed every word. He looked like he wanted to scream, or cry, or both. But he didn't. Just stood there, fists clenched, that same fury that used to scare me flickering behind his eyes. But it didn't scare me now. Because I wasn't that woman anymore. I was the woman who set legal traps with silk gloves. Who armed herself with trust documents and security footage. Who took years of quiet heartbreak and turned them into headlines. You think this is over? He asked, low and bitter. I tilted my head. No, I think this is just beginning. He blinked. You want revenge? No, I said. I want peace. And now I have it. Because you finally showed the world who you are. I don't need to convince anyone anymore. Least of all myself. He stepped forward, just half an inch, but I didn't move. Just held his gaze. You raised me, he said, like it was some kind of weapon. I did, I replied. And I'll carry the guilt of what you became for the rest of my life. But I won't carry you. I closed the screen door slowly. Clicked the lock. He stood there for a moment longer, breathing hard. Then he turned and walked away, shoulders hunched, shadow long in the porch light. I watched until he disappeared into the dark. Then I went to the living room, sat down in my armchair, and looked out at the quiet street. I didn't feel triumph. I felt clarity. He had crossed a line, and I had drawn one. And from this moment on, my door stays closed to anything that doesn't come with love, respect, or both. The courthouse smelled like cold coffee and cheap paper. I sat on the hard bench outside the courtroom, my hands folded neatly over my purse. No trembling, no panic, Just a strange calm, the kind that comes when you've already survived the worst. Ryan and Melissa arrived together. Matching gray suits. Matching grim expressions. Like they were walking into a funeral they thought they could postpone. They didn't even look at me. Not once. Their lawyer, a young man with too much gel in his hair, was flipping through papers, whispering fast, clearly trying to keep them from unraveling before the judge even walked in. They were suing me, claimed I was mentally unfit, that I was being manipulated, that the lottery winnings had overwhelmed my judgment, that I needed their guidance for my own good. As if they thought the video made me look unstable. What it did, in reality, was make them look exactly how they are. My lawyer, quiet, older, precise, stood and adjusted his glasses. "Are you ready?" he asked. "I've been ready," I said. Inside the courtroom, everything echoed. The judge was a stern woman with silver hair and no patience for nonsense. She asked for opening statements. Melissa's lawyer started his performance. I watched her nod solemnly, a hand over her heart, like she was doing community theater. Ryan sat beside her, eyes down, playing the dutiful son. And then it was our turn. My lawyer didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He submitted the full footage to the court. Not just the viral clip. All of it. The threats. The manipulation. The conversations about managing the money. The judge watched the screen intently. No reaction. Just a tightening of her jaw. When it ended, the courtroom was so quiet I could hear my heartbeat. Then my lawyer handed over the documents, the blind trust paperwork, the medical evaluations confirming I was of sound mind, the timeline showing every careful move I made before going public. The judge turned to Ryan. "You filed this petition claiming your mother is unfit." "Yes, Your Honor," he said, trying to sound concerned. "She's been acting irrationally. And yet," she said, flipping through the papers, "she's taken more steps to protect herself, her assets, and her legal standing than most of my own colleagues." He opened his mouth, but she held up a hand. "Petition denied." Boom. Just like that. Melissa gasped. Ryan slumped in his seat. The judge continued. "This was not a guardianship concern. This was retaliation. And it's over." She banged the gavel. "Done." Outside the courtroom, Ryan tried to speak. I didn't stop. I walked right past them. Past the lawyer with his limp briefcase. Past Melissa and her frozen smile. I stepped into the sunlight and took the deepest breath I'd taken in months. Not just air. Freedom. They'd tried everything, manipulation, pressure, even the courts. And they lost. Because they underestimated the quiet woman in the cardigan. But I wasn't just someone's mother anymore. I was the woman who fought back. And I'd just won. 6 months later, I stood at a podium in a navy blue dress I hadn't worn in years, looking out over a sea of faces lit by soft chandelier light. A retirement foundation gala. They invited me to speak. Not because I was wealthy, not in the way the other donors were, but because I'd used part of my winnings to fund a program for older adults learning to read. A mobile library van, senior tech classes, story time for grandparents and grandkids alike. They called it Evelyn's chapter. I didn't choose the name. But I liked it. When the local anchor brought me up to the stage, she smiled into the microphone and said, "Evelyn Sullivan, educator, survivor, and now, an unexpected inspiration to thousands." There was a smattering of applause, polite but curious. Then came the first question. "What made you go public?" I didn't hesitate. Because silence protects the wrong people. A quiet hum of agreement rolled through the room. The anchor leaned in. "What about your son?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I smiled gently. "He's finding himself. Far away from my money." A few people chuckled. I didn't. Because that wasn't a punchline. It was the truth. After the lawsuit collapsed, Ryan and Melissa tried to control the narrative. Claimed I was unwell. That they'd been edited out of context. But the footage didn't lie, and the public didn't buy it. He lost his standing. She lost her platform. And I found my footing. I stepped down from the podium and walked past donors, reporters, old friends I hadn't seen in years. Some shook my hand. Others hugged me like they'd known me forever. Not one of them asked me for money. Outside, as the gala lights glowed behind me, I looked up at the stars. My driver waited by the car, but I lingered for a moment, just breathing. No more hiding. No more shrinking. I thought of all the women who'd written to me. Who whispered, "Me too," through typed emails and shaky voicemails. Women who'd been guilted, bullied, or just quietly erased by the people they loved most. And I thought, if I had to lose my son to gain this voice, so be it. That's the thing about surviving betrayal, it doesn't just make you harder. It makes you louder, clearer. You learn to draw a line not out of anger, but out of love for yourself. That night, I got into the car and leaned back against the seat. My heels were off. My feet ached. But I was smiling. I didn't just protect my fortune. I reclaimed my name, my dignity, my story. And now, the rest of my life was mine again. These days, the house is quiet. But not the kind of quiet that haunts you. The kind that heals you. I spend most mornings in the sunroom, a cup of Earl Grey in hand, wrapped in my favorite shawl. The light pours through the windows just right this time of year, soft and golden, like an old friend come to visit. The roses outside are blooming again. Stronger, fuller. The cuts I made back then? They worked. Nature doesn't hold grudges. It simply lets go of what no longer feeds it. I try to do the same. Every so often, a letter arrives, some typed, some handwritten in shaky cursive. All from women. Some my age, some older, some heartbreakingly young. One said, "Your story saved my life." Another, "I thought I was the only one. Thank you for speaking when I couldn't." I answer every single one. It takes time, but I do it. Because I know what silence feels like. And I won't leave them there. I keep the letters in a wooden box on the bookshelf, right next to Harold's gardening guides and the photo album I once couldn't bear to open. Now, I flip through it from time to time, not to mourn the past, but to remember the truth of who I've always been. A woman who built. A woman who endured. A woman who knows when to lock the door and when to open her mouth. I haven't seen Ryan since the courtroom. Last I heard, he and Melissa had moved out of state. Trying to start fresh, they said in one interview, before the public stopped caring and the cameras turned elsewhere. They still haven't apologized, and I've stopped waiting, because forgiveness, I've learned, isn't always about letting them in again. Sometimes it's about letting yourself go free. I don't speak of them much. Not out of bitterness, but because they no longer occupy the center of my story. I do. Yesterday, Clara came by with fresh scones and gossip from church. We sat for hours, laughing the way only women in their 60s and 70s can, without filter, without shame. Before she left, she looked around and said, "It's peaceful here." "It is," I said. Finally. Sometimes I think about what I'd tell my younger self, the Evelyn who flinched when her son raised his voice, who gave until her hands were empty and still offered more. I'd say, "You are not crazy. You are not selfish. And you are not alone." I'd say, "You're allowed to stop the bleeding, even if the cut came from someone you love." And mostly, I'd say, they can take your patience, your silence, your holidays, but not your spine. The birds outside are chirping. The tea is still warm. The key to my bedroom door still hangs from my neck, not because I'm afraid, but because I earned the right to rest without worry. And the camera? Still up, still blinking, not because I expect another storm, but because I'll never be caught unready again. I met her at the park. A young woman named Carla. She was pushing a stroller with one hand and reading a library book with the other, some historical romance, the kind with windswept hair and brooding dukes. The baby was sleeping. She looked exhausted. We struck up a conversation over benches and breadcrumbs. I liked her instantly. Not because she was charming, she wasn't, really, but because she was honest. Raw. "I'm doing it alone," she said, bouncing the stroller gently. "His father's gone. My mom's sick. It's just me and this little guy." She didn't say it for sympathy. She said it because the truth sat heavy and needed somewhere to go. I started bringing extra tea in a thermos each time I walked. One for me, one for her. Over the months, I learned her story. Her dreams. Her fears. She never once asked me for anything. Not even when she found out who I was. That's why I chose her. When I sat down with my lawyer again, I brought two things, my updated trust papers and a new name. "I want to leave a portion to someone who actually knows what to do with hope," I told him. Carla didn't know yet. Not officially. I wasn't sure I'd live long enough to see her receive it. That didn't matter. What mattered was this. My money, my legacy, would not rot in the hands of the entitled. It would root in the hands of the capable. I didn't need a bloodline. I needed a seed line. People who knew how to build from nothing. People who gave without taking. People who believed in stories and survival. She was one of them. And in a way, I saw myself in her. Not the current me, the younger version. The girl with a tired back and an unshakable spine. The one who stood alone and didn't flinch. My lawyer raised an eyebrow when I told him the plan. "You're sure?" he asked. "I've never been more sure." He smiled. "Most people leave everything to their children, even when it hurts them." "I'm not most people," I said. And I meant it. I left something for the library, of course. And a small grant in Harold's name for retired carpenters starting community gardens. But the heart of it? The real, beating core? Went to Carla and that sleeping baby. Not because they needed saving, but because they'd already started saving themselves. I walked home from the office that day and passed the bakery on 3rd. Bought a croissant. Walked slowly. Watched the leaves fall and didn't feel sad. This was what dignity looked like. Not just surviving the storm, but choosing who gets shelter afterward. It was raining that day, thin, cold drizzle that barely touched the ground but clung to your bones anyway. I didn't tell anyone I was going. Just got on the bus with my umbrella, my cardigan, and a small envelope in my purse. The kind of envelope that doesn't carry checks or apologies. It carried truth. Ryan and Melissa had moved into a condo across town, rented, not owned. Their faces had stopped showing up on news feeds, and from what Julia told me, they'd burned every bridge they had trying to spin the story. No one bought it, but I wasn't there for revenge. I was there for closure. Melissa opened the door, barefoot, in sweatpants, looking ordinary. Tired, older. She blinked. "You?" I nodded once. "I won't stay. I just need to hand something to Ryan." She stepped aside, reluctantly. He was on the couch. Looked like he hadn't shaved in days. Eyes sunken, face pale. He didn't stand, just stared like I was some ghost he'd tried to bury in a press release. I walked in slowly, placed the envelope on the coffee table, and turned to leave. But then I paused. "I'm not here to forgive you," I said. "That's your work, not mine." He said nothing. "I raised you to be better than this," I continued. "You had every chance, every ounce of love I had left. And you spent it like pocket change. Still nothing. But I want you to know, this house, this storm, this silence? You built it, with your own hands." Finally, he spoke. "You humiliated me." I nodded. "Yes. And you threatened me." He looked away. "I'm not here to argue. I'm not here to punish you. I just needed to look you in the eye one last time and let you know, my story moved on without you." Melissa scoffed quietly behind me. I didn't turn to her. I walked out, shutting the door behind me with a calm that felt holy. Outside, the rain had stopped. By the time I reached the bus stop, I felt lighter. Not triumphant, not vengeful, free. Whatever guilt remained was theirs to carry. I had done what so many never get to do. I had faced the people who betrayed me and walked away on my terms. I didn't owe them grace. I didn't owe them another chance. I had earned my ending. And if they wanted to rewrite their roles, they could start by picking up that envelope. Inside it, a copy of my will. Not because they were included, but because they weren't. The mailbox is full again, letters from women I'll never meet but somehow know. One wrote, "I turned the lock, just like you. Thank you. I sit in my sunroom, tea in hand, book unopened on my lap. The camera light blinks once, still watching, still ready. But I don't need it anymore. I no longer sleep with the key around my neck. I keep it in the drawer now, right next to a worn photo of Harold and me at the beach, wind in our hair, the world ahead of us. Funny, I thought the story ended when he died. Turns out, my story was just beginning. The roses bloom without permission. The library van rolls every week. And Carla? She started evening classes. I've left the world better than I found it. And when I go, I won't be remembered for what was taken from me. I'll be remembered for what I refused to give away. My silence, my worth, my name, and that's enough. It always was.